Hello, good evening, and welcome back. So, the communist is out of the race. Sorry, the Democratic Socialist is out of the race. Yes, Sanders suspends his presidential campaign. He has given up. He's decided that the Democratic Party would rather put a senile old man there instead of a disillusioned old man. The battle between the two straight white men is over, and now we have Joe Biden being propped up by his teleprompters. So I suppose for him it's just as well the quarantines come into effect because, hey, he's going to be awful on stage, and if you put him next to Trump, I think he's just going to get confused. He's going to start walking off stage. He's not going to know what's happening if his handlers aren't there to take care of him. But yes, Sanders is now out. As the BBC reports, Senator Bernie Sanders has suspended his campaign to become US President. The development clears the way for former Vice President Joe Biden to become the Democratic Party's nominee, who has, of course, received the endorsement from Tulsi Gabbard, who suspended her bid about a month ago, but yet to hear from Barack Obama. So, good luck, Joe, but I don't think it's really going to make any difference at this point. I think people are beginning to realise that Obama could talk the talk, but he could not walk the walk, and he was not good for race relations, which is all he really had going for him, and he wasn't helping lowering employment or healthcare costs. He wasn't doing anything of the sort. So I think that veil has been lifted, and therefore an endorsement from him might be more harm than it is help. So Mr. Sanders, 78, told his campaign staff about his decision on a conference call on Wednesday. He is expected to address his supporters online shortly. Look out for that. That'll be a right laugh. But here, I'm pleased because, as I say, self-described democratic socialist, which means communist. I mean, Stephen Crowder, Loud with Crowder, has covered this ad infinitum, essentially, to say that, yeah, well, it all ends up the same way, doesn't it? Oh, we're going to vote in the socialism. So, okay, cool. So then you're reliant on mob rule, and if people don't conform, then that's where you get the guns out, and that's why one of the first things they want to do is strip you of your freedom of being able to protect yourself. And then they're going to limit your freedom in being able to join groups of 2 or more people because of the dissenters. Then they're going to limit what you can read because it's going to be conspiracy theories, because it's talking bad about the candidates. And then it's going to be the realization that it's what's happening now with coronavirus. But yes, that's the situation we find ourselves in. So the BBC tries to suggest that he's helping out the working class, essentially, which I think is incredibly misleading because he sold his soul to appeal to identity politics, basically, and saying that white people don't know what it's like to be poor, which is what Tim Pool goes on about quite a bit when criticising Bernie Sanders. And that he's just brought hook, line and sinker into the progressive left's way of viewing things through a racial lens, which is not very helpful whatsoever. If they wish to go into race realism, then that's for them to do, but there's a whole lot of baggage associated with that. Because if you're trying to say these people need help because of their ethnicity, then it's going to be, okay, so you're saying ethnicity makes a difference. What kind of difference does that make? Does that mean when we find a correlation between ethnicity and a result, let's say a crime, for example, does that mean it was caused by the ethnicity then? If you're saying that race has an effect. And so they really fuck themselves over because, I mean, as Dr. Jordan B. Peterson mentioned, that if you're going to play identity politics, you do not want white identity politics to get involved in that, the white identitarians, if you will, because they will just run circles around you. Like, do not get into a fight with somebody who can easily bend you over and destroy you, let's just put it that way. And that seems to be what they're wanting to do. So if you're encouraging that take on identity politics, then you're going to lose. So I don't recommend that from a tactic perspective, but also, of course, from a moral perspective, because that's what they like to pretend that they're good at with their virtue signalling. And the same goes for Bernie Sanders, with not considering the outcome of what he's saying, trying to say, for example, let's pick something here. So healthcare for all. So okay, so people are going to have to give up their labour voluntarily in order to provide that service to other people. But with the fabricated story we saw recently about a young lady saying that she was banned from working her job because apparently she wasn't allowed to wear a mask when dealing with coronavirus sick patients in ICU, which was all a fake story and it came out a couple of days later. But him supporting that and saying, oh yes, this shouldn't be the case, she should be able to choose. It's like, are you aware that under your plan, people would have to work that job and provide that service for other people? Because you're saying that for them, it's a right, which means that there are workers, and it's their responsibility in order to provide that service which you name a right. Lacking self-awareness, as all communists tend to do. It's like, oh, if only I was in charge, then we'd have the utopia. It's like, you're not nearly that smart, otherwise you'd be in business and be able to have that free exchange between people in a way of providing them so much value that they're more than happy to give you the money. And then, of course, you wouldn't be taking that money because you're a good person, but you're smart enough to be able to give people the things that they want, and you'd be able to solve the world's problems that way. It's as simple as that. The people who have done most for the world are people like Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos. Able to make the quality of life that much better, also provide them jobs, and make it so much easier to do the things that they want and need to do. They are the most successful people, not the politicians. And that is just the fact of the matter. So if Bernie Sanders really thought he was going to lead us into that utopia, he would be able to prove it in the free market. Of course he can't, because he isn't smart enough to do that, because nobody is. So, argument over. Great, thank you. What else? Free public college. So, as we know at the moment, only 17% of people are projected to actually pay back their student loans, and only about half make a start on it. So you want other people to pay for their college, right? And then what limits are you going to put on the tuition fees? Because you know that, as in, tuition fees you're saying is free, but as in the money that the university is getting paid is still per student in order for the professors and graduates that they are hiring in order to do the teaching. So how much are you going to be charging? Because then the taxpayers now don't get a choice whether or not they wish to support them or think they're worth that much. If they have a good enough value. That is then what you're saying. And you're not able to see which courses are utter shit. And then surely if you're thinking of taking care of the vulnerable, then you should allow people to see as clearly as possible which courses are more useful and which aren't, instead of suggesting that they're all useful. And that's where the free market again comes in to say, well, this is useful and this isn't. Then he says raising taxes on the wealthy, saying that he doesn't think 90% tax would be ridiculous, and then also going into the wealth tax idea with Elizabeth Warren to say, oh yeah, just charge them just 0.5% over, $50 billion on their total wealth, yes, including their liquid assets. Yeah, that definitely won't have knock-on effects and actually cause their entire empire to crumble. No, definitely not. And then increasing minimum wage, $10, $15, $20, I can't remember what the latest one I think is. I think it's supposed to be a $15 minimum wage for everybody. So even though the cost of living differs across the country, apparently you want one standard minimum wage across the country. Even though it doesn't make sense because you're putting it everywhere and it needs to be far more minuscule in its breadth of where it's taking effect. And the best way to do that, funnily enough, is to leave it down to the employers to decide how much the value is worth, considering how much they can charge, considering how much other people are making, in order to pay for that business. And just let it sort itself out. That is the way to do it, instead of trying to suggest you can fix this with your government magic wand. Because, as is always the case, they think, things are working quite well, but there's something they could do with changing. So let's change that. Then, of course, they fuck it up because they don't know what they're doing when it's a finely tuned machine. It's like, oh, okay, we made a mistake. So the right idea would be, let's pull back and decide what we should do next time. But instead of that, they go, oh, well, let's do a bit more then, because we still know that we've definitely got the right idea, but we just need to stop people from getting away from it. So let's put some more force into it, and then that doesn't work, and then they just have to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and that's why it never grows, because they have their dream in mind, and they're going to force you to comply one way or another. But hey, now it's down to the dementia patient. So, here's to another 4 years of Donald Trump. So, until next time, have a great one.